Thanks for joining us at the Clive Barker Podcast, the only podcast dedicated to the works and worlds of Clive Barker. In episode 157, Jose and I talk about the Marvel epic Nightbreed comics number 13 through 16, which are the Nightbreed versus Rawhead Rex issues.
Well, welcome to episode 157. This is Jose.
And I'm Ryan.
And today we're going to be talking about our epic comics, part 4 of Clive Barker's Nightbreed. So,
yeah. We were originally going to do this on the episode with when we talked about the Jihad issues, but there was just so much to say about those issues that we think we made a pretty full episode, and just kind of decided to leave these for later. So that's where we're at.
So it seems like we're back to talking about Rawhead today.
I know. Yeah, we just talked at Rawhead, not as much as Hellraiser, but Rawhead's making a little bit of a comeback.
Yeah. And I forgot to mention this, but I was going to open the other episode with this little quatrain that I found. It was from Granny Grimm's Ghoulish Book of Grammar. Apparently that was a thing, and I don't know if you saw that on the show notes that I put up, but yeah. That seems like really cool, and they go for each letter of the alphabet. They find like a monster or a horror movie, and for R is for Rawhead Rex.
Yeah.
And they had a little funny music that it was like, he runs around eating children like it's some sort of race, and if he really likes you, he'll piss right in your face.
God.
I think that's hilarious, and I guess we'll put that in the show notes for the other episode.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a thing.
Yeah, right. It's funny. I mean, I think that Rawhead, people mostly remember him for the movie, and not as, I mean, our listeners know the short story and maybe the movie, but I think probably he's more widely known amongst the non-Clive Barker fans as just a schlocky movie, I think.
A schlocky movie, yeah, you're right. For me, I think it was basically first I read the story, and then I saw the Eclipse graphic novel, which is really cool. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then years later, just, maybe the late 90s, maybe early 2000s, that's when I first saw the film. Anyway.
It seems like Rawhead Rex, the movie, is what you watch after you've read all the books and gone through all the comics and seen all of the, all of Clive's actual movies that he, directed and wrote and stuff. And then okay, now I'll watch this, even though I read some bad things about it.
So these are the issues of Nightbreed. I think it's number 13 through the 16.
Yeah.
And this story was a 4-issue arc called The Return of the King.
And I think this first issue, I really like the artist in here. And it was a little bit sad later on to see them swapping artists right within this miniseries.
I know. I think that Mark Teixeira may very well be the best artist this series ever had. It's right up there with Jim Bakey's art for the first few issues adapting the movie. So I agree. I mean, he used to make. I think I got into Mark Teixeira's art when he started doing work for Ghost Rider, which was really, really awesome. If you're into comic books, you may have seen those issues, I guess.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the art, by comparison, in the next 3 issues after this is disappointing. And they even changed. Did they change the writer also?
No, it was still
DG.
Yeah, still Dan Chichester. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just think this story goes a little bit off the rails here. I guess I like what he was trying to do with the whole Algernon Kinder character being like a tribute or a reference to Aleister Crowley.
Right.
I just think that this story is a little unhinged, a little out there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're hearing the word unhinged a lot in the news lately.
Yeah, you got a point there.
Yeah.
So I think at this point they were still trying to make Nightbreed book monthly. Mm-hmm. It was still being bi-monthly or longer because I think they were having some trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it opens, of course. This is opening just talking about this Algernon Kinder character, and
yes,
that we know that he files his teeth into points, and he likes eating Thai food and crapping on people's carpets.
Hey, do it thou will.
Yeah,
shall be the whole of the law. He keeps saying that. It's a big reference to like Aleister Crowley, but it opens with Leah Klipoff performing a ritual of dream visualization that cuts into a dinner scene, like you said. And Algernon Kinder's plan is he wants to keep up the great traditions, so he needs a son to keep up his tradition. He thinks of himself as a spiritual leader, I guess.
Yeah.
He has a cult of sorts. And also possibly he wants a child to feed it to Rawhead Rex as an offering. So that's also part of his agenda. But, and then they cut to the Everglades where there's a Nightbreed party going on.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny to see the Nightbreed in disguise like we saw before. It's not quite as bad as Dagon with a hoodie, but it is pretty funny to see Peloquin and Kinski, wearing hats and sunglasses to, disguise them.
Like that's going to do anything, right?
Yeah, I know.
Especially when you look at, Peloquin, he's got those things coming out of his face and the tentacles. Yeah. So he's got this, he looks like a taxi cab driver.
He's got him tucked into his collar and his hat.
Yeah. And Kinski has this weird looking sock hat on his head.
It's pointed. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're trying to get to this party, and they need a car. So what do? They go into this shopping mall, I think, at Kissimmee Bargain Plaza. So this takes place in Florida, most of this. So you're going to have a lot of gators eating people and stuff. But they steal a pink Cadillac.
Yes.
To get to this party, which is not. That's not. What was that word you say? That's not conspicuous at all, right?
Yeah,
when you're trying to.
Yeah, right. It's like so unsubtle. They just. They right in the middle of this shopping mall. They hop into this car, and I guess they hotwire it. They don't show how. Yeah, they hotwired it and drive it right out the window. Right.
Right. They hotwire it in seconds. I guess it's just because that's what they got to do, and it's Gallows, Kinski, and Peloquin. Yeah. And they escape by having Gallows use that hand of glory thing, and she lights it up with a lighter. And it seems to be. It's her thing, If there was an action figure of Gallows, she'd come with a little hand of glory and a lighter, I guess. Right. Because that's her thing.
And when they're running towards the car, their hats are off for some reason. Now they're not disguised anymore.
Yeah.
Which they look cool, which is, I guess that's the point of the art. But why'd they bother getting disguised, I guess? I don't know.
I mean, they even go into a store to get clothes for the party. And,
right.
Peloquin buys a tuxedo and proceeds to immediately rip off the sleeves to make it sleeveless.
Or does he just steal? I think he might just be stealing the tuxedo.
Yeah, he just goes in and tries it on and then's like, all right, this is it. I'm taking it and rip. It takes out the sleeves, and that's when he just runs to the car.
Yeah.
So the party is the baptism of a child, of a Nightbreed child, Maximilian Bloody Bones.
Yeah.
And he's the son of this blobby-looking breed called Bloody Bones and a female one called Sathan or Sathan. I don't know how you pronounce this. So looks like a fun party.
Yeah, and they're getting married, right?
I guess. I thought it was more like the baptism of the
baby.
Kid.
Yeah, maybe that's
baby,
right. That's right. They were already married, I think.
Yes. And so, we get a little recap here. After the baptism scene, we get a little recap of the story of Nightbreed, of Rawhead Rex. I'm sorry. So we see Thomas Garrow trying to get that stone off the field, and then he pulls on the shovel, and then of course Rawhead comes out.
Yeah. And
whatever. So they connect that to the visions that Clea is having.
Yes, right, because she's like Algernon Kinder's partner, wife, something like that.
He calls her the Scarlet Woman. So she's the only one who stuck with him. At this point, he's like his cult is not that successful anymore, and they kind of run out of money. And I think at this point, he just has like a handful of minions, and she has to prostitute herself to make money for them to live.
Yeah, and her purpose, I think, according to him, is to have a baby with him so that he can have an heir.
Right.
He's so full of himself, and we learned a little later that she basically just stayed with him so that he wouldn't do that to anyone else.
Yeah. And so her visions that she's doing at the beginning of this book are meant for her to discover where is Rawhead Rex's body so they can retrieve it, because his plan is to bring back Rawhead Rex. So they do go to the city of Zeal after she finds out, and you find out that after the defeat of Rawhead Rex, that the city of Zeal didn't really do very well, and lots of people are leaving it and stuff. So,
and it is nice to see that this is the Rawhead from the short story and the comics, and not the Rawhead from the movie, right? Because it's the city of Zeal.
Yeah,
and I love the depiction of Rawhead in this comic. He looks good.
It looks pretty good. Yeah, very scary, very intimidating, gigantic, muscle-bound monster thing.
Yeah. He's going to change a little bit, unfortunately, in the with the change of the artists.
Yeah, that is, like you said, unfortunate that. It seems like this book kept just, getting different artists brought in. And if they had just stuck with Mark Teixeira, that would have been awesome. That would have been so much better. But unfortunately.
And I understand why, they change artists around. But, if they've got a 4-part miniseries, you should really keep the same artist for that miniseries, I think.
Yeah, you're totally right. So the only minions left in this cult seems to be a couple of guys called Matter and Vincam. So the Matter is a guy, Vincam is a punk-looking woman
with that little tuft of hair like a baby coming out of the top of her forehead.
There's two of those. They're like little hair horns that she has. Oh,
that's right. Yes, that's right. Yeah.
And Matter looks like a colorblind pimp, really, because he's got that zoot suit looking hair, and he's got like a furry collar that's green or whatever. It's like, wow, that's a pretty wild character there.
Yeah.
So they're looking for a baby at this point.
Yes. Yeah. And Peliquin seems to have gotten over his girlfriend from the Jihad series, having died. He seems to have gotten over that pretty well, because he's like really interested in these other women.
Yeah, because the Nightbreed party turns into kind of an orgy at the end, right? It just seems inappropriate for like a baptism of a baby.
Yeah. It just kind of to point out that they're more free and open and.
Oh yeah. They totally embrace life, and of course, Peliquin is known as being one of the most prolific lovers in Midian, according to the Nightbreed Chronicles. And there's some funny moments here, like Gallows is hooking up with this big green-looking Nightbreed, and then she's like looking inside his pants and telling him that he's got a small little penis, I guess. Yeah. And then in the meantime, of course, Peliquin is just jumping in with like male and female Nightbreed. So the thing is, after the baptism, Bloody Bones and Sithan discover that all right, well, we got some gifts, but we don't have any like formula for the baby or anything. And I have to say that's weird that Bloody Bones is a blobby looking breed. He looks like he looks like Peter Griffin when he wished that he didn't have any bones in that episode. There was an episode where he wished that he didn't have any bones, and he got his wish, and he just turned himself into like a mattress kind of thing. And this Bloody Bones and Sithan, they're both different looking creatures from humans, but somehow they both created a baby that's a perfect human baby.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right. And I think the baby is like an adult in some ways. Can it talk, or there's something about it I forget?
he babbles a little bit, I guess. Yeah, he babbles a little bit, but this story is just weird. It's just weird in the sense that I like Chichester's work in other comic books that he worked on, but in this one, it just seemed like he was just throwing all these ideas to the wall and see what sticks.
Well, I think it's also just the way that it only took two guys to lift Rawhead Rex.
Yeah.
It seems like they kind of skipped over the process of getting this corpse of Rawhead Rex out of the ground, which would be. I think they would have a lot of opposition from the people in Zeal, and it would just be really hard.
And I mean, that body, who knows how long it's been buried, and it still looks like it's untouched. Yeah. But, it's a magic creature, so, at the same time, you're like, oh, all right, it's a magic creature, so we'll
like in Lord of Illusions. If he was a regular man, no.
Right. With the Puritan, right? Yeah. So anyway, this issue ends with Bloody Bones and Sathan driving with Kinski and Gallows to a supermarket where they're going to get some food for the baby. And then, obviously they're going to come across Matter and Vinkham, who are out on the prowl looking for a baby to perform a ritual after they get Rawhead Rex's body. Yeah. But it seems like the time frame of the events in this story is just strange and incomprehensible at some point.
Yeah, because just a page before they were just dragging Rawhead's body into the motorhome
in England.
Yeah, that should have been in England. I mean, are they gonna drive the motorhome back from England to Canada or wherever? Or, no, I guess they're in the Nightbreed are in the United States now. They're not in Canada anymore.
Yeah, but this story is
drive back to the U.S.
Yeah, this story is full of weird inconsistencies like that, yeah. and characters show up in the middle of roads. You don't know how they got there. You don't know how they know that this is happening, and it's like I said, the story goes all over the place. But
and this Algernon Kinder. I mean, we're sort of led to believe at the beginning that he's he knows magic and he's pretty wise and knows what he's doing. But we kind of find out that. He didn't really expect this experiment to work, and he didn't. And it's a crazy coincidence. They didn't realize they'd actually kidnapped a Nightbreed baby. They were just trying to get a regular baby.
Right. And like you said, it seems like they should have showed us a little more about Algernon Kinder and how he. See him using some magic or see him doing something that shows that he's actually initiated into these magic proceedings, because as it is, it just seems like he's just a prankster, a trickster, like a hustler. And how would he even be able to amass like a cult if he didn't really do anything? I wish I had seen more of this guy. Because he talks about coming up with an elixir of life, and it would make his hair and nails fall off and all that. But then we see him next. He doesn't have any hair anymore, and he doesn't have nails, I guess. But you don't see any of his alchemical, experiments or anything like that, which I think would have added more depth to the character.
Yeah.
As it is, it just looks like some crazy guy who lives in a van, and maybe that's what they were trying to go for, I guess.
It's hard to say. I mean, and then it seems like he made up there's this weird mix of you just dug up a fantastical monster out of the ground, but you made up the spell to resurrect him. I mean,
right. And in the meantime,
then it worked anyway, even though he just made it up.
And in the meantime, Leah actually has a magic, because she does those rituals with those objects and artifacts, and she kind of visualizes things remotely, and she finds out where Rawhead Rex is buried. So she's really the one that has more of the power in this kind of cultish thing. Yeah. But So.
And then here at the end in the letters section, breeding ground, there's a guy that asks. There's a guy that asks, why is Narcisse back? And they say they don't explain it, but they say, that'll all be explained when we do the story arc. Bring me the head of Narcisse.
Yes, that was a guy called Brian Hunsaker, and he did bring that up, and I guess again, fans, after we saw Nightbreed, we kind of figured out that, wait, is this is different from the book, And then when we started reading the comics, we saw, Narcissus is back. How did that happen?
Yeah.
So of course now we know what really happened was a lot of interference there, and I guess they were just trying to gloss over it because they were like, well, movies, that's how things go, and so anyway, so that's.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, so that's where this issue ends. Is Matter and Vinkem kidnap a breed baby, and that's the cliffhanger for this issue.
And this issue ends with a full page ad for Imagica, which was awesome. And they talk in the letter section that Clive is touring with Imagica, which I was there. I saw him in Seattle on that tour. It was really cool.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's a wonderful image there with the Imagica cover. So then we go on to issue 14 that has an amazing looking cover by Dan Brereton, who worked in the Nocturnals, and he also did the adaptation for Eclipse Comics of Dread. Yeah, that's the same guy.
And I love that picture of Rawhead's mouth with his retractable teeth, in there, and Algernon's about to drop the baby inside.
Yeah. So like you said, they changed art here, and they brought in Dan Lawless and John Rion. I think I'm pronouncing it right.
It's a little bit of a shock to go from the cover, which looks really good, and then you turn the first page and like, oh, what is this?
Yeah, they changed the art, not necessarily for the best. I think John Rome is a great artist when he's painting things on his own. I have art from him. I have a couple of original art pieces from him. Mm-hmm. He does a much better job when he's doing illustrations.
Okay.
But sequential art like this for comics seems to be a little too overproduced, in my opinion. And it didn't really follow the other issues' continuity either in terms of the looks of the characters. Yeah. I don't know if he even had a chance to see the previous issues when he was working for this one, because I think it's the editor's job to provide the artists with the proper suggestions and corrections on how the character should look. I think that's what the comic book editor should do. He should tell the people, well, here's the story, here's where we're at, and these are the characters, and you should pick these elements up and continue. And I don't know. It seems like they were playing it a little loose with this comic book.
Yeah. So here, I think we're starting out right where the baby's been kidnapped out of the convenience store, and then there's this big sort of 2-page splash of Gallows and Kinski and Peloquin all like getting angry, and Bloody Bones like they're ready to fight. But they have these like crazy terrible weapons. Like Gallows has a stick with some glass taped on it.
I think you're looking at issue 15.
Am I looking at the wrong issue? Oops.
I think so. I think you're looking at the one where they're at the...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and so
this one opens back at the supermarket.
Yeah, I did pull the wrong one out.
Well, if you want, you can cut that part out.
Yeah, this cover with Peloquin and the skulls, that is really good.
Yeah. So this issue opens where the other one left off at the supermarket, and we see Matter and Vinkem fighting with Sithan to take her baby, and we discover that Sithan has like a long-looking frog-like tongue, which they cut off, so. Oh,
yes, right. And actually, I take back what I said about the art. I think the issue 15 had worse art than this one.
Yeah. Sithan is different in this issue, for example. She's much more human now, whereas in the Mark Texiera artwork, she looks kind of yellowish, and she has like these weird lumps on her face.
Yeah.
Here she's much more human. She even has like a beauty makeup on and all that. So, yeah, I guess the continuity is a little flaky in this. And another thing I don't like is that the opening quote on the first page is that the dead can die. So that because she's being threatened with a knife, and they say, well, the dead can die, and I hate that thing where they keep bringing up the fact that Nightbreed are dead,
Right.
special zombies or something.
Yeah, and that's not exactly true. I mean, I think some of them have gone beyond death, but it's not like, across the board you're all dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not like they're reanimated, all of them died and came back. It takes away also any sort of meaning if you say that they're dead, but they can still die, I mean, what's the point of that?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, they're something. They're not, they can't just be dead.
So so they take the baby, they slash at Satan, and meanwhile the breed are outside, and Bloody Bones gets crazy when he sees what's going on, and he kind of just plops himself on the gas pedal, and somehow they just crash into the supermarket. So,
and this thing where I think Zathan or whatever, I think that her power is pretty lame because if all she can do is like grab people with her tongue, but then if you cut her tongue, she dies. That's I don't know.
They might have stabbed her somewhere. And in the meantime, again, this is what I was trying to bring up in the previous issue, that I don't know how far this supermarket is from the Nightbreed party, but somehow Peliquin is in the middle of this weird orgy, and he stops and he sniffs the air and he says, "Oh, I smell blood." And then immediately runs over, and he starts just running towards the smell of blood. And he I don't know how far that was, but he runs over, and he gets there just in time to see Matter and Vinkum escaping with the baby. So he just jumps under the car and slashes at the tires and stuff.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and of course here's another time where Nightbreed driving through a wall or a window with their car. It's like this is a recurring theme in this comic now.
It keeps happening. Yes, It keeps happening. So another thing that again is weird is that Algernon is back at the caravan with Leah, and they're preparing for the ritual to bring back Rawhead. And Leah says something which is really like contrived. It says, something must have happened with Matter and Vinkum, because it sounded like there may have been an accident. It's like, what? Where are you guys in relation to this? You're in the middle of nowhere, and you're at this weird like mini golf thing or whatever, and then somehow Algernon appears out of nowhere at the crash site, to bite on Gallo's hand. And it's like he was just in the caravan, like bending over like Rawhead's body. What? Yeah. It's hard to understand where these things are happening.
They just got it from England.
Yes, that's right. It was just a quick hop and jump, while the Nightbreed were having their party. So, and then of course again there's Leah driving a caravan, crashing into something, and so they grab the baby. They leave the breed behind, and they go do their ritual at the Pirate Golf, parking lot.
Yeah, in their motorhome.
Yeah. And then...
and there's this big fight to get the baby, and at one point, Peliquin even gets him back. But...
Yes, he does, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's really weird. They do the ritual. It's sex magic. It's Goetia sex magic, and Algernon is on top of Leah, and he's symbolically fathering a child onto her. And like you said, she only stuck with him so he wouldn't do this to anybody else. Which I mean, she could have just left him, I think. And he's depicted as being an addict. He's shooting up in one of the comics. He doesn't have any money. I think she could have just left him, and he would just be totally like lost and aimless and just become homeless if she really left him.
And if she wanted to do something, the time to do something is when they're talking about kidnapping a baby.
Right.
I mean, right. And I don't like this splash page we're talking about with the magic, the sex magic and stuff. I don't like that Rawhead in the background, the Rawhead corpse.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like him. It just looks like a tall human. And
I have to say that this must be the largest caravan I've ever seen, because Rawhead Rex is supposed to be in some of these panels, Rawhead is just enormous, enormous and massive. Yeah. But here he's just laying across the length of the caravan, and he just fits in there.
Yeah, the width of it. So it's like he's 9 feet tall. So then that means that this thing is like 10, 12 feet wide.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't fit in a car lane.
I mean, I'm sorry that it seems like personally, it seems like we're just trashing these comics.
Yeah.
And I don't want to like say that we are, but at the same time, we kind of are, because I don't know. I just thought this story was all over the place. And
I really liked this series, this 4-part miniseries when they came out in like 91.
Right.
And it's a little. These are one of those. I think that they don't age well, or I guess when you grow up and come back to them, it's like, whoa.
Right, and it's like you said, the time for Leah to say something would be when they're kidnapping a baby, and she keeps whispering these things in panels where she says, someone says, "What's next after the ritual?" And Leah is saying like a bath for about a month, and then another part she kind of whispers at Algernon, "Oh, let's end this. The baby, the killings, it's got to end." Well, you can do something about it by not contributing to it,
Yeah.
Anyway, so there's a scene with a cat, I guess, a black cat, and like you said, he came up with this weird ritual, and basically I think that he brings Rawhead Rex back to life accidentally just because he spills blood on top of Rawhead Rex, and that seems to like wake him.
And then he's like, "Oh, I got a baby in my mouth," and he swallows bloody bones. Or no, what is it? Is that the baby? What's the baby's name?
Maximilian Bloody Bones. Yeah, so they call him Max.
Bones. Yeah.
Yes. So, and as soon as Rawhead Rex rises from the dead, again inside this caravan that must be related to the TARDIS because it's bigger on the inside than it is on the outside, and everybody's freaking out, and he's just standing there. Rawhead Rex is just standing there, and everybody's panicking. And he says, "Master, is this any way to treat your son?" He's not doing anything. He's just standing up, and immediately Algernon grabs a shotgun, shoots Rawhead Rex in the balls, and the shot goes through his testicles into Leah, who's standing behind him.
Yeah,
and it's just weird. It just reminds me of that folksy story about the Union soldier in the Civil War. They got a bullet that went through his testes and hit some lady that was like hanging her sheets out to dry, and then she became pregnant with a baby. I don't know if you ever heard of that story, but it's a folksy story that people put in songs and stuff.
It sounds like they got that from this, but this is ridiculous. This part it really lost me. I mean, as far as like, come on. Now imagine you're Rawhead Rex and you're standing by all these puny humans, and one of them shoots you in the crotch. What do you do?
Well, I love the panel where he's just recoiling, grabbing his crotch, and going like, that I should use that as a cover picture on Facebook because it's just hilarious.
Yeah, and it's like he should have killed everyone in that room.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely,
no hesitation. I mean, there's no indication that there's any kind of spell where he's like bound to be, to be enslaved to Algernon. I don't know. I mean, it just he just sort of aimlessly follows Algernon around, and we don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
He's a king, right? He should kill everybody and leave and do whatever he wants.
Absolutely. And I just want to bring up that the fact that the Rawhead Rex has a connection to the Nightbreed because, like we will find out that he was one of the kings of the Nightbreed at some point. They had several leaders. I think we mentioned this in the previous discussion of the other 4 issues, but Rawhead Rex at one time was one of the gods that the Nightbreed worshipped. And so he's Baphomet's adversary in a way. And that's why they bring up Eigerman at the end of this comic book.
Yeah.
Eigerman and Ashbury.
Yeah, and we're not there yet, but there's a sort of an arc with Ashbury's character that I don't particularly like in here either.
Yeah. Yeah, and Eigerman is just crazy and he just keeps killing everybody. At this point, he's no longer a policeman. He's just some crazy guy, serial killer that just kills people
Yeah,
just as quick as looking at them, he just shoots them in the mouth.
Everyone he talks to. I mean, these are people that would just go, otherwise it's not like they're going to go, hey, there's some, dangerous man on the loose. They're not going to tell the police on him. They would just have a weird story. Some guy asked me these weird questions. It's not, I don't know. It doesn't really seem like there's any real reason to be murdering all these people. It seems like that would cause more problems for him than it solves.
Absolutely, and there's a moment at the end of this comic book where we see that Ashbury has the icon of fertility that was used to defeat Rawhead Rex back in Clive Barker's story.
How did he get that?
I was thinking about it, and I think. You remember when they broke into a church and they were talking to another priest in a previous issue?
And he needed to get something, but they didn't really explain what it was.
Right. And in this one, we see that Ashbury has the icon, and he says the icon was passed through the hands of 2 dead deacons, which I'm assuming one of them is the verger, old Coot, the Coot, Reverend Coot, right. And maybe another one. Yeah. So I think that he might have got this from the church when he was at that other church in a previous issue. So that's what I'm going to go with.
Yeah. Yep. And they're basically setting up Ashbury to become like the Reverend Coot, or no, not Coot, Deacon. Right. Yeah,
the verger. Yeah.
Yeah, the verger, the one that goes crazy and becomes like a priest of Rawhead. And
they want to harness Rawhead Rex to fight Baphomet. I guess. I think that might be their plan, right?
Yeah, it seems that way. It's a really convoluted plan. I mean, and I think that it kind of feels like the writers had this loose end of Eigerman and Ashbury, and they didn't really know what to do with them. And it's like let's take care of it this time.
Right.
And so in the letters, there was something interesting here. The Clive Barker Appreciation Society. It's right there in the upper left.
Yeah, I saw that. You mentioned once I was talking to you about the Clive Barker Society that didn't really take off, and you said, "Yeah, I think that was." Like, wasn't that an older name that they try to do? And I was like, oh, really? So in this one, it was the Appreciation Society. So
slightly
there
different.
Was.
You're right. Yeah.
Yeah. If you go to Revelations, clivebarker.info, you can find out some covers of the newsletters that they had listed there on their fanzine section. So I never knew about this, to be honest. Yeah.
And it was run by Deborah Gordon in Medford, Massachusetts.
Yeah, I wonder if she's still a big Clive Barker fan.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to find out.
Yep. And there was another guy in England. His name was John Gregory in Exeter, Devon, England. He was the guy who ran the British chapter of the Appreciation Society, apparently. Wow.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yep.
And then, so now we're on to the one that I was talking about earlier.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Issue 15.
Yeah. Well, I think we can only use the excuse of it's early so many times. But
that's right. It's Saturday morning as we're recording this, and we had to wake up early to do this episode. But hey, it's fun. It's a beautiful day out here.
Yeah. It's actually, for some reason, it got to like 40 or 50 degrees yesterday. So the ice is melting, and it was raining last night, and people are crashing all over the streets.
Wait, you got ice in Alaska right now?
Oh yeah, we had like a couple inches of snow for the past week.
Jesus Christ!
Now it's all melted.
Last week on Tuesday we had 99 degrees here in Arizona.
Wow.
I probably shouldn't tell you this.
We got as low as like 17 degrees, I think. But now,
oh my God! Yeah.
But now it's like 40, so that's the hardest. The toughest part for us is when everything melts, when it's supposed to be wintertime. Yeah.
Anyway, issue 15, like you said, the artwork seems to be deteriorating a little more. And I probably shouldn't say deteriorating. There's a bunch of different artists here, and it looks like they worked in different sections.
5 artists on just this one short issue.
Yeah, it's Dan Lawless, John Rome, James Hostin, T. Fine, and Jennifer Louie.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I said, it seems like they worked in different sections of the comic. So at some point you're flipping pages and it looks like, oh, now it's different.
Yeah.
And you see things get a little different. And this is called The King of Depravity. It's part 3 of 4. Yeah. And it opens at that pirate mini golf in Kissimmee, Florida. Yeah.
And I have to say that these weapons that they're making are terrible. Like,
they are.
Kinski, he's really good with knives, so why would he electrical tape a knife to the end of a long stick?
It's a putt. It's a putter,
right?
Right?
It's a golf club, yeah. But
I know
that's dumb. I mean, it's a terrible weapon. He's much better just holding the knife.
Yeah, I mean, a spear could have some tactical advantage, but in this case, I think that
it's not much of a spear, though. I mean, that's gonna
that's gonna bend. But Gallows has a bunch of like broken glass somehow taped to the end of a putter.
Yeah,
and I don't know how that works.
Even worse, because that's disposable, right? You use it one time and it's done. That's done.
So that splash thing you said with 2 pages of it seems like things are a little off in the perspective. Like I don't know where Kinski is standing. He looks like he's floating in midair.
Yeah, and he's got a pirate helmet on, which obviously he got somehow from this pirate mini golf place. But come on.
It's awkward because John Rome, like I said, he does really good work. But in this case, I just think that he was not the best choice for a comic book issue. And even Peliquin looks different now, And the worst thing for this, and it's something that happens in this issue and the next one, is that Bloody Bones, who's just this big blobby thing, he somehow seems to be holding on to things or just floating in midair in some panels.
Yeah,
and it's
I'm looking at those pages too, and I also don't like how washed out the color is. Like everything turned like brown and purple for some reason.
Yeah. So anyway, so they're from this vantage point in this pirate boat, and they're looking down at the caravan. And at this point, they shouldn't even be like just standing there. They should just be like attacking the caravan. But anyway,
instead of posing.
Yes, instead of posing.
These weapons that probably would have taken them 10 minutes to put together.
Yeah.
They would have been better off just, using their own skills or what they had, instead of making these dumb weapons.
So Leah Klipoth has been shot, and she's received a belly full of pellets covered in rawhead semen. Yeah. She's dying. She tells Algernon that she really wasn't barren. She just aborted every single kid that he impregnated her with over the years, which makes him really, really mad, and he throws her out of the trailer.
Yeah.
And the Peliquin's immediate reaction is, "Ooh, look, it's a body, meat. I'm going to have some food." It's like, what are you doing?
Yeah, you got a baby to rescue, Peliquin.
That's right, yeah. And Gallows has to like hold him and say, "No, the law forbids it." It's like, again, with this thing, we know that the law forbids them eating meat. Yeah. Just focus on the mission.
Did you? So, I think that the darkest, scariest thing in this comic is sort of cheated out of at the end. This whole idea that they sacrificed this poor baby, which is pretty dark and grim and stuff. It's all made okay at the end, which we'll get to, but it just sort of feels like they really pulled their punches.
Oh, they did, especially when it comes to the baby, because the baby gets swallowed by a monster with super sharp teeth, and he spends like hours, I would imagine, if not a whole day, inside a monster's belly full of bile. Mm-hmm. And somehow he comes out of this totally unscathed. I guess you could say that he's a Nightbreed baby, so he could have some sort of power we don't know. But I'm just going to go with the fact that, look, it's a baby, and I guess it's Marvel, so they were like, let's not have the baby suffer actually any sort of damage. But it just makes it, like you said, it seems like they're pulling their punches, and it's ridiculous that a baby spends time inside a monster's belly. Yeah. And then it just, you cut it out and the baby comes out and he's fine.
Yeah, it's like several days he's been in there.
It's like Red Riding Hood being cut out of the wolf's belly and being perfectly okay, right?
Yeah. I don't like that, and I also don't like this recurring theme of women being used to create babies, or to, for, like in Jihad. I didn't like that either. I don't know.
Sure.
Yeah, it kind of bothers me that they, that it's like.
That's a good point with Jihad, because, like you said, there seems to be elements in the stories in Chichester's work that are just repeated over and over.
Yeah,
like crashing cars through windows and getting women to get pregnant and have babies within hours. You know,
and babies that they're whatever these babies have some special purpose, and the woman has no say in it.
So somehow Eigerman also found out where the caravan is.
Right.
I guess we can say that Ashbury is sniffing them out. I guess he's like Eigerman's radar, right? Like he can sniff them out, so he's tracking the breed. But at some point, you just wish that Eigerman and Ashbury had some better story arc in all this. Ashbury does have the icon, so as soon as he senses that Rawhead is there, he just runs out of the car holding the fertility icon and say, "My God demands an offering," and just runs over.
Right? Yeah, he's pretty fast and loose with like who he worships, isn't he, Ashbury? I mean, God, he was Christian, and then he sees Baphomet, and he's like, "Oh my God!" And now it's like, "Oh, I don't like Baphomet anymore because he burned me. I like Rawhead."
Right. So the Nightbreed attacked the cult, and they've overpowered them, and now they're trying to decide what to do with Rawhead Rex. And Rawhead Rex, again, he's just standing there looking. He doesn't do much. He has a flashback of when he got killed because he sees Ashbury running at him with the fertility icon.
Yeah.
And then it flips the story on its head, because we discovered that Ashbury is running over to Rawhead Rex with a fertility icon, not to bash his head in, but to break it against the floor, saying it's an offering for Rawhead.
Yeah, and there's like little bolts of lightning coming out of the statue, which makes it more like the movie version instead of the short story. Right.
So again, the Nightbreed are just trying to decide what to do to get baby Max out of Rawhead, and there's some fighting. There's some really confusing fighting here. The art changes.
None of it by Rawhead. He's just kind of hanging around.
Yeah, he's just hanging around there, and it's just basically Algernon Kinder and his minions fighting the Nightbreed.
Yeah.
And
they shouldn't stand a chance. I mean, come on.
Right. And then the caravan starts leaking fuel, and then, there's a lighter that someone uses, and everything blows up.
Yeah, and then the art changes, and it looks I do not like at all. I mean, maybe this is just this artist's style, but whoa.
It looks like it's made with crayons, right?
Yes. Oh my God. It feels like a bait and switch a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. So there's since this is Kissimmee, Florida, there's no shortage of mini golf and amusement parks. So now they cut to like a medieval knights kind of thing.
Yeah, right.
With a castle, and then Rawhead Rex is eating like a corpse.
Yeah.
And, it's weird. It's really weird. Especially when they discover that Rawhead Rex has this ability to animate dead tissue or something.
Yeah, what is that?
I have no idea. The Ashbury tells Algernon that Rawhead Rex remakes reality by the power of what he holds within his very flesh. But they never really explain what this is meant to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and anyway, so the thing is that the Nightbreed escaped from that explosion by taking Leah's body with them, and she's like the woman. She's been dying for like what, hours now?
Yeah, right, and they just are dragging her around wherever they go, I guess.
Yes, and then she finally dies, and they discover that she's about to give childbirth, and then Peliquin raises up her body like it's a mannequin and says, well, here's our, fertility symbol now, and he just shakes her around like she's a puppet. Yeah. And he says, we can use her corpse her pregnant corpse to fight Rawhead.
Yeah.
And she already has an enormous belly at this point, which means that Rawhead Rex has super sperm.
Yes. Yeah, and then what is this with Algernon cutting a hole in Rawhead's side and grabbing out of him?
Oh, your guess is as good as mine on that one.
Yeah,
really.
What is that? I mean, why is Rawhead standing for this stuff?
Well, he encourages him to do that. He kind of opens up his flank and kind of, wants him to put his hand in there.
Oh, right, because there was something in there that was bothering, right? He was feeling sick or something, I think.
Yeah, he wants to make this is a parallel to when St. Thomas sees Jesus appear to the apostles after he's died, after he's risen. And Thomas doesn't believe that Jesus' apparition is real. And then Jesus says, well, would it help if you touch my body? And Thomas touches the hole in his flank where the Roman soldier speared him in the cross. So this is kind of like a weird, perverted parallel with that. Yeah. It says here, there must be no mistake that he is throwing over their old God with one of his own making. And Rawhead wants him to see for himself that the beast is real. So there you go. That's what I took out of this.
And you got Rawhead pissing on Ashbury, who's becoming the new Declan, the Verger Declan Ewan or whatever, and he's basically acting just like him. Like they just moved him into that role instead of being Ashbury.
Yeah, that's again, very unhinged story so far, and the last issue is really when I just kind of check out a little bit. Yeah. So anything interesting on the breeding ground of issue 15?
Let's see. Somebody asks if they could do a story about Peliquin's origin, and they don't really answer. I see. Oh, that's not a bad idea, or something like that, but it's not. Yeah, nothing groundbreaking or super exciting.
Yeah, there's just, normal fan stuff like, hey, I love this comic book, and at the time, I guess, people were just wanting to see more Nightbreed. So anything that was coming out, fans were jumping at it. And like you said, it just hasn't aged very well.
They're happy that Peliquin's come back because he had sort of disappeared up until the Jihad series. Right.
And at this point, the Eclipse graphic novel didn't exist yet because they will announce it in the next episode, next comic book issue 16. That's where Breeding Ground mentions that there is an adaptation of Rawhead Rex's story being prepared for Eclipse Comics.
Yeah.
So at this point, I think there was only the movie and the story.
Yeah, right. And that Eclipse, was that must have been really close on the heels of this. Because it seems like there was a lot of Clive Barker stuff that came out around between 1990 and 1992 in comic book form.
Yeah, that was awesome. That was great time to be a Clive Barker fan.
Yeah.
So issue 16 is The Return of the King Part 4. It's called Hymn to Rawhead, and the cover says, finale, one lives, one dies, one feeds.
And the finale, the cover, of this issue is really cool. And this time I am looking at the right cover. We've got with Rawhead. I love that huge open mouth with the extended teeth.
Yes, the giant maw.
And Peliquin is facing off against him, which is in comic book fashion, it's not exactly what happens in the story, but that's okay.
It's an exciting cover, even though I still don't understand why John Rome draws Peliquin with those weird markings on his head. Down the center strip. That's weird.
Yellow snaky stripe down the center of it.
Yeah, that's just weird. That's not. I don't understand why they came up with this, and not just that, but those horizontal stripes going down the middle of his scalp. Just don't understand what that is.
And now we have the payoff for why they're saying Rawhead makes things come back to life, right? Because now the woman with his baby is sort of like a zombie giving birth.
Well, she's not yet a zombie. She's dead, and she's being attended by the issue opens with her being attended by 2 EMTs.
Yeah.
And I don't understand how they came here. Who called them? I think it must have been the Nightbreed that called them over to that amusement park. And so they say, well, there's nothing. I got nothing, no heartbeat, no anything, but there's a moving baby inside her. And so they're like, this is really weird, and one of them says, let's deal with some reality. She's not just gone, she's rotting.
Yeah. and the art here, it's not my favorite, but it is consistent and it does a good job of depicting what's going on. And it's nice looking. It's not bad.
It's more classic comic book line style artwork.
Yeah,
I think. It's very good.
I mean, I think they went way too far, with sort of amateurish stuff in the last issue. So it's nice to see this looking more like a,
Yeah.
More decent.
So I think that the Nightbreed show up here and they face off against the EMT people who are trying to attend to the body, and basically their plan was just to get a vehicle, an ambulance. So they get the ambulance, they put Leah's body in there, and they drive off, and they take one of the EMTs as hostage. Yeah. So the Nightbreed here is just, the Nightbreed, Kinski is threatening a guy with a knife, and it's like, I'm just not that into this.
Yeah.
And again, Igerman shows up, and he immediately shoots the other guy in the head, the EMT that was left behind.
Yeah, and it's kind of the Nightbreed's fault that guy died, right? Because they abandoned him. And there's this sort of a thing going on where their chaos is sort of their morality is getting worse all the time. I mean, you can't just walk into a shopping mall and steal anything you want. I mean, it's kind of like what they're sort of proving that it's okay to hunt them down and kill them. Yes.
I agree with you there. I mean, there is definitely, it's not a sympathetic Nightbreed that they're depicting here in some ways. I mean,
and they were supposed to be sympathetic. So I don't know. I don't like that they just kind of go wherever they want and do whatever they want, and
they just wanted to be left in peace and have their own space to be able to create their city and live out their days as the last tribes. But here it seems like they just decided, well, this world is ours for the taking. We're just going to do whatever we want.
Yeah.
Now the cat's out of the bag, and it feels wrong somehow, like the wrong direction for it. But anyway, so they have a little flashback scene where they show that Algernon Kinder killed his dad when he was younger. And then I think they're trying to draw some parallel with like him and Rawhead Rex saying like father, like son, which doesn't make any sense because Algernon brought Rawhead Rex back from the dead doesn't mean that he's a father figure to Rawhead Rex.
No, there's no way he would think of him like that.
Right.
I mean, look at Garrow, right? He didn't say, "Oh, you brought me back by moving that stone. I'm so indebted to you." He just ate him.
Yeah, and Rawhead Rex again is giving him his urine to drink, which is kind of gross.
Or no, he turned him upside down and drove him into the ground, right?
Yeah, Garrow, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
He didn't.
So we get another little flashback here that shows that Rawhead's tribe would breed babies onto human women.
Yeah.
But usually the mankind would just kill those pregnant women because they didn't want the babies to be born. They didn't want that.
And that's consistent with what Rawhead thinks about in the short story.
Yeah, that is true. That babies would claw their ways out of the mother, and then they would get killed by other men. But still, we don't really understand what was the point of that. Were they just trying to populate the Earth with hybrids or something?
I think the hybrids must have turned into them, right? Because there's no other way for them to procreate.
I think you're right. So Rawhead Rex is always like a tribe of masculine giants, and they would breed with normal human women and try to create more monsters to join their tribe. So The thing that happens in this issue, though, that's weird is that, of course, the baby he's going to sire with Leah is not a male, it's a female. So it's the rise of a new matriarchy for Rawhead Rex's tribe.
Yeah, right, which is not whatever happened before.
Right.
It's kind of an interesting idea, but I don't know that it makes sense, but that's okay.
So somehow the Breed find out where Algernon Kinder is hiding with Rawhead, and they show up and they put the ambulance in front of their caravan and they set it on fire. And Ashbury calls it a miraculous star in the east parking lot, which, as crazy as he is, that seems really stupid for him to say something like that. But,
And here we've got a morgue attendant reading Hussy magazine. So, of course, there's always some character that's got pornography or is like leering at women or, harassing them. Yeah, and the one thing that the Breed also leaves in the burning ambulance is a funny thing. They leave a poster for Greg's Gator World and says, announcing the birth of Rawhead Rex and Leah's baby, courtesy of the Breed. And as stupid as that seems, Kinder's cult seems to play right into it stupidly when it's an obvious trap. Yeah, they're like, oh, you've got a baby. We got to go get it. Yeah, it's a blessed event. Let's go attend it. It's like, that's a trap. That is a trap. Yeah, right. I guess they're just confident because they have the power of Rawhead Rex behind them, even though Rawhead Rex has done nothing but just stand around awkwardly. Yeah. So Gallows goes into that morgue somewhere dressed as an EMT to pick up a dead baby corpse. She just says, oh, I'm just here to pick up that dead little baby, a recent baby. And he says, oh, it must be this John Doe. And it's like, wow, that's convenient, right? Yeah. So she takes the baby, and that's going to be just setting up a trap at a gator farm, which it's going to be one of those things. The gators are going to eat people. Right. Of course. So the trap is set. And again, you see Bloody Bones talking to the hostage EMT that they took. And he's saying, well, you have to help me get Rawhead Rex's offspring off that dead lady. And, because that cult got my baby and they fed it to this giant monster. And I have to go there and get the baby back. But somehow that makes sense. And she says, all right, sure. So the Kinder and his cult arrive at the gator farm, and there's an obvious trap. I mean, there's a baby, a dead baby in a crib or something in the middle of the swamp. And I guess their plan is for Rawhead Rex to come over and eat the baby, and then Bloody Bones is going to jump into Rawhead's mouth and try to get Max. Yeah, this is crazy. And they're like, absolutely crazy. Rawhead, you idiot. That's not you. That's not your baby, no. Or no, they it's worse than that. They're like, they don't realize that they think that is his baby. They're like, no, don't eat your baby. Yeah, it's a dead baby. You should. It's pretty clear that it's dead. But at this point, it's like, man, I'm checking out of the story because it's just this is way too bad, and it's pretty bad. Well, and Rawhead is also kind of like a TARDIS, right? Because when Max or when oh geez, yeah. When Bloody Bones goes down inside of him, it's like this huge cathedral of melting bodies and bones and stuff. There's skulls. There's entire skeletons in there. There's body parts, and it's like, what? He's only 9 feet tall. He can't have this much stuff inside of him. I know. This is turning into the Fantastic Adventure or something. Yeah, right. Yeah. And there's a weird joke here that I feel like I need to point out. It's that so the Nightbreed set up some traps, and when they Vinkem and Mater are walking around, and somehow these noose ropes come down and they grab them by the neck, and you see that it's actually Gallows that just lassoed them with 2 ropes, and she says, "Welcome to the lynching party." Yeah. And I thought, that joke is kind of awkward. Yeah. Right? Yeah, and she's also got the ropes wrapped around her own neck. And she's like up in a tree or something. It's like, wouldn't that just pull her down? Your guess is as good as mine at this point. Yeah. But, of course,
then Eigerman shows up and starts shooting his shotgun at everybody.
Yeah,
and
he's a total wild card in this because he doesn't seem to care about. He doesn't seem to have any kind of plan at all. He just wants to go around shooting people.
Yep. And then we see the MT injecting Leah's corpse with drugs to deliver the baby somehow. It's like it's a dead body. Drugs are not going to do anything, but it doesn't matter anyway because Eigerman gets eaten by gators in the meantime. That's the first one.
There's a panel here where Vinkum, or no, the other guy, he's like they're both hanging by their necks, and he says, "Fear not, friend Vinkum, my blade will get us," and then his arm gets blown off. And it's like
it's bad.
Why is he talking like that when he's hanging?
Yeah, it's bad.
You don't talk, you just do it.
Yeah, he's hanging from the neck, by the way. It's hard to talk when you're hanging from the neck. But, that's just the way comics are. I mean, sometimes, especially 90s comics or like superhero comics, you would see someone jumping off a tree and then there'd be like a little balloon. And then there's a big speech there just as he's jumping off the tree. And it's like, it's just the way
comics do that all the time. He'd have these huge, long speeches while he's flying. I saw one where they were jumping towards a bathroom, right? And Beast had this huge long speech about something. I don't remember what it was, but then the explosion out of the bathroom said like "bathroom."
Yeah, Beast from the X-Men, right? Yeah, that would happen, especially because he was supposed to be a professor, so he would always speak with a very eloquent speeches. Yeah, in the middle of a fight. That was weird. Anyway, so like I said, I'm checking out of the story at this point.
Right.
Eigerman gets eaten by gators, and then Leah comes back to life somehow. It's like, why did she come back to life? She was a corpse. We saw the MT inject her with drugs, and now all of a sudden she's standing up and talking.
Yeah.
And Algernon Kinder sees her and freaks out, and he kind of punches her in the belly, and his hand goes into her belly and gets eaten by the baby that's inside.
Yeah.
And then we see that this monstrous baby comes out of her body, and somehow this little weird goblin thing jumps up on Rawhead, and in the meantime, Bloody Bones is inside the, Rawhead Rex's corpse with Max the baby, and he starts
pulling on like tendons or something to try to make him get sick and throw them up.
Yeah, but it's so silly. This whole thing is just so crazy.
Yeah.
And then Rawhead.
Why is Baby Max like totally unscathed?
Yeah, that's supposed to be corrosive bile, right? Mm-hmm. And then just Rawhead Rex just basically starts puking and doesn't stop, and then Algernon Kinder gets freaked out and he says, "Oh, the sea of bile," and it's like, yeah, I guess. Meanwhile, the female Rawhead Rex baby jumps on Rawhead's neck and
strangles him with its own like umbilical cord.
Yes, but it seems like he does this like in a moment, and then of course, Rawhead Rex died after all. He just got killed, and he falls, collapses onto the big pile of bile. It's just weird. It's just really weird.
Bile was a vision that what's her name, his girlfriend had at
Leah.
Leah had in the first issue.
That's right. Yeah. When it cuts to that dinner party,
gonna die, and there was a sea of bile, and like we shouldn't do this, and he just kind of now he's finally seeing, oh, you were right.
Yes, and then in all this, you see Algernon Kinder being very perplexed, and then of course a gator jumps up and eats him.
Yeah.
Gators eating people are the Deus Ex Machina of this story. They just show up to clean up the mess. Crazy stuff. Anyway, at the end, everything's fine. Yeah. The baby is retrieved. And we even see like the breed going up to this hilltop and talking to Baphomet, who is in one piece somehow. I wonder if this is supposed to be...
Yeah, it comes after Jihad. So he's Cabal Baphomet.
Cabal Baphomet, gotcha. Yeah. All right. So they go over and
he hasn't been in these issues at all. It's because he's been coming to terms with that or something.
And then I guess the reanimated corpse of Leah joins the Nightbreed, and you see a barn with all these Nightbreed children, and including Rawhead Rex's little baby.
Yeah, which I don't think we ever see again, right?
No.
Yeah, that's kind of a shame. I mean, they went to all this trouble to create a new character, and then they just kind of drop it.
And it's an ominous ending because they say that the baby's dreaming of a place called the Wild Woods and the kings that rule them and the day they might return. So thank you, Nightbreed. You're keeping Rawhead Rex's baby alive, and it'll doom us all.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and then when we go to the letters section here, we've got... there's an Aleister Crowley fan that gets really mad at that, that they made Aleister Crowley look bad, and you obviously got this guy from Aleister Crowley, and it's not a favorable depiction, and it's not cool, and they're like, no, actually, we got him from a variety of sources, not just Aleister Crowley.
Oh, that's right. I'm looking at it right now. He's complaining. He says that I'm a former associate member of the OTO, Ordo Templi Orientis, and he finds that the lack of attribution to the Aleister Crowley reference is repugnant.
Yeah, right.
And, I guess he is entitled to his opinion, but yeah,
wow, if you don't call him Aleister Crowley, you don't have to do that, right? I mean...
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think if you're a guy who takes this stuff really seriously, then a comic book in the 90s should be your least concern. You probably should be talking to some entities out there, making some magic or something, other than writing angry letters to Marvel about.
Right.
Yes. And the reply is interesting. I think you were a little hard on us. Algernon Kinder is based on a patchwork of real and fictional occult figures. To say that he was based solely on Crowley would be both inaccurate and an injustice to all the other sources that we drew from, including both Clive and DG's imagination. But here, okay, the reply is also a little BS because obviously this is totally based off of Aleister Crowley, who they call him the Great Beast, the Master Therion, all that stuff. So, yeah. Anyway.
He's actually a little less interesting than Aleister Crowley.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't really see Algernon Kinder do much of anything except just bring back Rawhead Rex and be an actual creep.
Right. Like, how does he get... He bites... Who is it that he bites with his sharpened teeth? And
Gallows.
He says, like, the serpent's kiss or whatever. Yeah, Gallows. Yeah. It's like... Somebody does that to you in real life, you fight them. You don't get mesmerized, or I don't know what it was, but it just seemed like that was that was way overplayed, the importance of that.
Well, he hints that he could do that also to that lady in the dinner party that he was having in the beginning of the first part of the story, and that's when she throws him out.
Yeah.
All right, so
so I think it starts out kind of strong and promising, especially with the art of the first issue. Then it kind of goes downhill, and it seemed like they didn't really know what to do with Rawhead because they don't want to make him kill a bunch of Nightbreed. So
it's a shame. Yeah, it's a shame. I don't know. This comic book at the time, I got it, and I was like, yeah, this is cool stuff, and I was reading it, but I think I always deep down thought to myself, this is a really weird story. But just because it was so outlandish, it felt like, hey, it's something different. It's not just like a Spider-Man telling kids to stay off drugs and, right. cracking jokes while he spins webs to catch bank robbers and stuff. So in some ways you were like, wow, this is kind of new and exciting and weird. And it's got sex and stuff in it that you didn't see anywhere else.
It felt really taboo when you're like 16 or whatever.
Yeah, I think taboo. That's the right word for it. And but now that I read this stuff again, I'm like, you guys could have done something so much better with this. Than this weird mess of chaotic stuff that you guys came up with this story.
Yeah. And what happened to Ashbury? I know that Eigerman died, but
Ashbury.
Did Ashbury die? Where did he go?
Huh. I think he does he get That's a good question. Do you have the comic book? Can you look at it?
I've got it open right now.
He crushes the fertility icon, and then Rawhead Rex baptizes him in another issue. But then it's like, he kind of just disappears, or?
Oh, there he is. He says, "I am here for you, my God, in your time of need." And Rawhead backhands him. Oh, yeah. He falls in the water and gets eaten by crocodiles.
There we go. Another one.
He does.
Yes, that's the second person who gets eaten by crocodiles, and then the third one is Algernon Kinder.
Right.
I know. Gator Farm, great way to get rid of bodies.
I guess. Jeez.
Yeah. So
that's I think that I don't really like that. I think that they kind of understood it too, that they didn't really have a clear plan for that the duo of Ashbury and Eigerman, and it seems like they're like, can we just get rid of these guys now? Because they show up every once in a while and ask people what they saw, and then they shoot them, and it's kind of like that. This is getting old.
Yes, getting old.
Yeah,
very repetitive.
Let's just get rid of these guys. And so
it's too bad, because I thought in this story they actually just gave him some sort of purpose when they get the icon, get the fertility statue, and they decide to harness Rawhead Rex to fight Baphomet. But then it doesn't matter, because at the end of the story they're both dead.
They get eaten by crocodiles.
Right. So you might as well not even have brought them back into the comic book.
Yeah, and they were major characters in the movie, and now they're eaten by crocodiles, and it's kind of like, I don't know. It feels like they were in there because they had to be, because they were loose ends from the movie, but not that any writers were actually interested in their stories.
Yeah, and honestly, yeah.
There's nothing interesting about this Eigerman from the Nightbreed comics.
No, I don't think so either.
He's a one-note character. He's like, ask questions about the Nightbreed, shoot the person that you asked.
Yeah, shoot him in the face.
Yeah.
I never really thought that even the movie Nightbreed characters at the end, especially, in the director's cut, we get a different ending nowadays, and of course. But I just don't care about Eigerman. I just don't see where they could have taken Eigerman as a character to become like an adversary to the Nightbreed, especially when Peloquin could just grab him and kill him pretty easily.
Right, and they get away with that not happening because they're always like a couple hours behind or something. Right.
So I wish they had done something better with the comic book. There's a breeding ground letter here in one of these issues that I thought was interesting. It's when they mentioned that Nicholas Vince is going to come into the comic book as a writer to write some stories. Cool. So they were preparing for that. And it turns out that at the end, it's really he just wrote comics for like the last few issues before they got canceled. Mm-hmm. And I guess all the stories that he was planning on doing, he had to, make a synopsis of that and put it in newspaper clippings in the last few pages, right?
Right, and we'll get to those too. I'm trying to remember, are there 20 or 25? I think my memory's telling me it's 25 issues. Right?
I think it's 25, yeah. And I in the comic books, we used to have a contributor called Andrew Kopp who did these retro reviews of Hellraiser and Nightbreed comics. And he stopped at number 13, I think.
Oh, okay.
Number 12, I think. That was the last one that he did a retro review. I can't understand why he did it, though, because I guess that after reading the Return of the King, he probably thought, I'm done with doing retro reviews.
Right, because issue 13 looked really good. The story was a little weird, but it was promising. And then after that, it just kind of is a downhill slide.
Yes. And then,
with some exceptions. I mean, I think Nicholas Vince's writing, I think he did pretty well with the time that he had. But
Sure. So this was the Return of the King, the very convoluted story. Could have been a lot better. They could have used, if they only stuck also with like one artist, that would have been so much better. It would have been so much better in terms of keeping the consistency of the story.
And if they stuck with the first artist, that would have been the best. I don't know why, how or why, or maybe it was a money issue.
I'm wondering if, this was edited by Mark McLaurin and D.G. Chichester. I guess they just didn't really do a good job editing these comics because they just were not keeping the whole continuity and the whole plan for the series together. It was just very loose. It was very loose, and I think that
the visual style especially, but also the story.
So I'm sorry. I know that D.G. Chichester wrote some really cool stuff for Marvel, but in this case, I just think this was weird.
Yeah. It was. It's disappointing. I mean, I think that it was a lot better in my mind, having read him in the '90s, but now coming back to it, I kind of am. It's disappointing and kind of wish that I could go back to thinking about how great it was.
One thing that I forgot to mention was that in the opening issue 13, Leah Klepoth is in a house in Wimpole Street, 1975. And I want to bring up that Clive Barker owned a house in Wimpole Street. It was number 36 Wimpole Street, opposite the house owned previously by Elizabeth Barrett and Robert Browning. So that's a reference that they put in the comic book to a place that actually Clive Barker used to live in.
Oh, that's cool.
In England. Yeah.
It's kind of neat how every once in a while there'll be some reference to Clive Barker.
Yeah, that's cool. That's I guess they were talking to Clive Barker while they were doing these stories. So anyway, that's the Return of the King, I guess.
Yeah. So in coming up next, we'll be doing more news episodes, and then we'll come back to the Nightbreed. Probably do 4 at a time. That seems like a good amount. I think when we did 6, that was a little too much. Yeah,
we tried to. Yeah. So next up it'll be 17, 18, 19, and 20.
Yeah, and then maybe we'll do 21 through 25 after that.
Okay, so it'll be a 6-part series of the epic Nightbreed comics.
Yeah. So it'll be cool to see where this goes, and I think we already did the Boom Studios ones, but we already covered those. But yeah. And this podcast, having no beginning, will have no end. You can find the show notes for this episode, as well as lots of news and features, at www.clivebarkercast.com. Leave comments there, or get them directly into the podcast by clicking the Send Voicemail tab on the right. Please follow us on Twitter, @BarkerCast or @OccupyMidian. Like us on Facebook and join the Occupy Midian Facebook group. You can listen on the site or subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Lipson, TuneIn, Pocket Cast, Google Play, and Doubletwist. Look for our apps in the iTunes Store or Google Play Store. Subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Please take a couple of minutes to leave us a review on iTunes. It means the world to us and helps us spread the word about Clive Barker. The Clive Barker Podcast, or BarkerCast, is an independent editorial fan site and podcast that is not affiliated with or under contract by Clive Barker or Seraphim Films. This is a labor of love by the fans for the fans.
Thanks for listening.